Hello friends. Today we're going to be talking about how to nail slow burn romance in fantasy. Slow burn is my absolute favorite subplot in fantasy novels. And I don't care if people scoff at romance in fantasy, those people suck. Okay? Romance and relationships are a part of life. So why would it not be part of a fantasy story? Anyway, I digress. The thing about getting slow burn romance right is that you have to get the pacing right. You have to nail those romance beats because if you rush things, it's no longer a slow burn. And if you delay things too much without anything really happening, your readers are going to get frustrated and not in a good way. So, a good slow burn makes readers desperate for the characters to get together. Every interaction matters, every glance matters, every almost touch sends your readers squealing, okay? And honestly, fantasy is the perfect genre for this type of romance because you've already got danger, you've already got quests, you've already got betrayals, wars, you've got forced proximity built in, you've got magical politics. All of that creates tension between your characters. So, in this video, I'm going to discuss some of the biggest mistakes writers make when introducing slow burn romance in their fantasy novels and what it really takes to get it just right. If you're new here, I'm Rita. I'm an aspiring fantasy author who's currently working on a novel that is loosely based on Mulan, which also has a romantic subplot, obviously. I also have a degree in English literature, which means that I have spent a long time analyzing novels, learning writing craft, learning character arcs, not to mention these past few years obsessively world building and just learning about fantasy writing in general. Before I get into it, I also want to mention that this video is based on a blog post that I have on my website, and I'm going to link to that blog post in the description below in case you want to read it. And I do encourage you to do so because it is more in-depth and it has examples and stuff in there as well. Okay, without further ado, let us get into it. So one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is confusing slowness with tension. You can't just delay the romance just for the sake of it, hoping that the reader is going to stay invested, okay? Stuff actually has to happen between the characters. You need progression. So maybe, they start off hating each other. Maybe it's like an enemies to lovers situation. Maybe they're allies who don't really trust each other at the beginning, or maybe one of them is emotionally unavailable because they've got a ton of issues from the past. Whatever it is, you need to define the relationship dynamic early because that's going to shape the entire romance arc, okay? And again, you absolutely need progression. It cannot just be status quo the entire time. And the next thing that I want to talk about is what I call the almost moments. So those are scenes where something almost happens. And if you love romance and fantasy novels, you know what I'm talking about, okay? They stand too close to each other, or maybe they're like face to face and he's looking at her lips or whatever it is. Or one of them gets jealous and immediately denies that emotion, or is like, oh, I'm not allowed to be jealous because, he doesn't mean anything to me. Or they touch for half a second and suddenly they forget how to function like normal people. Okay, that is the good stuff that slow burn is made of. And fantasy gives you so many excuses to force those moments naturally. For example, sharing a tent during a major storm, or if they get stranded together, or having to rely on each other in battle, or one saving the other's life, or whatever it is. Fantasy is the perfect backdrop for romance. And those kinds of situations, they build intimacy without needing giant love confessions right away. So it's little things that add up throughout the entire novel. The next thing that I want to talk about is emotional vulnerability. It matters a lot in slow burn. At some point, the characters need to start seeing the real version of each other. Not just like, wow, they're super hot and they know how to fight and that's super hot, okay? I mean actual emotional intimacy. They need to show each other their true fears, their regrets, their weaknesses, their dreams, whatever it is. Just, they are real people who have real emotions, and eventually they need to start showing each other those things so that the relationship feels real. Because superficial relationships, like I've read a lot of romantic novels that throughout the book, they've only had a few conversations and suddenly they're in love. And no, it's not believable. They need to be emotionally vulnerable toward each other so that the romance feels real and it feels earned. Another thing that I want to discuss is that, yes, slow burn needs to be slow, but please, for the love of your readers, do not drag it out forever. Just because it's a slow burn doesn't mean you need to torture your readers. They still need little rewards along the way. Okay? Give them something, like a hand touch, or a protective moment, or a near confession, or a kiss that almost happens, or whatever it is. Give them something. Give them some hope that something is coming. Okay? The way that I would frame it is, you want to be feeding the tension. You do not want to be starving the audience. Because if absolutely nothing is happening for 600 pages of your novel, your reader is going to be pissed and they're going to stop caring about this relationship. Okay? The last thing is the payoff. And the main thing about the payoff is that it has to feel earned. It cannot be random. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be like, oh, I guess we're in love now because it's nearing the end of the novel. No, all of the things that I mentioned earlier, all of those things have to happen so that the payoff feels earned. These two characters, they need to go through enough together that there was no other possible outcome for them. They were going to end up with each other, no matter what. They were destined to end up together. And I'm not saying that they're fated mates or anything. Like, I'm just saying all of the crazy crap that they went through together, it brought them closer, and now they must be together. Okay? But I also want to caveat this by saying that in general romance novels, so non-fantasy, just general romance, you're essentially expected to have a happily ever after. In fantasy, I mean, most of the time readers are expecting that at the end of the series, some kind of happily ever after. But if you don't want to give them that, that's okay. But they need like a happily for now situation, or some kind of other satisfactory ending. If it's a 3 or 4 book series and throughout it all there's a slow burn and your readers are rooting for these two characters to be together, they're so invested, and at the end they break up because of something stupid or one of them dies, your reader's going to be devastated by that. They're going to be like, why was I so invested in this love story if it just collapses in the end? Okay? So the readers, they're not falling in love with the romance because the characters are attracted to each other. I mean, most fantasy with romance has 2 hot characters in them. That's the norm nowadays, but that's not why your readers love the romance. They're falling in love with the romance because they watched this relationship slowly become unavoidable. And that's what emotionally destroys people in the best way. Okay, I wanted to mention that if you want to nail your slow burn romance in your fantasy, I have a workbook that essentially has mini lessons, prompts, examples, everything to guide you through this process so that nothing is rushed, nothing is overly delayed, and that you hit all of the proper slow burn romance beats. If you're interested in that, I will have a link in the description below for that slow burn romance workbook. I also have a romantasy beat sheet, which I can also link in the description. And there's also an enemies to lovers workbook that I can link as well. And there's actually a bundle that I offer that has all 3 of them together. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Also, please subscribe to my channel. I publish videos like this pretty regularly. I cover world building, romantasy, plot structure, outlining, character development, all of the fun fantasy stuff. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.